It's time for a reboot. Not a do-over, but a do-everything. A time to hike this, taste that, camp here, and road trip there. In a place that's wide open for new memories. South Dakota. Out here, adventure goes with the territory. Whether you're backpacking in Badlands National Park or diving into Lewis and Clark Lake. When you're ready, get back to nature and back to what you love. Get inspired at TravelSouthDakota.com.
And if you want to grab a snack, grab a farm-rich snack. Something about that song just makes me hungry. Well, any requests? Oh, how about some mozzarella sticks instead? Folks, it's time for me to grab a snack. Feel free to do the same. You can find Farm Rich in the freezer aisle or online. This next one goes out to all the cheese lovers out there.
Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick. Here today to discuss the slot corner position and some of the importance of slot corner depth. Again, is Sebastian Bauer. Sebastian, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
No complaints. This is our second recording of the day. I really appreciate you being on again, a topic that definitely has a lot of interest. So tee it up for us in terms of slot corner and how you maybe felt it hurt the Ravens in 2020.
Yeah, definitely. So we have really been relying on a player who is oftentimes injured, and his name is Tavon Young. And the solution for Young has been to bring Marlon Humphrey and put him in the slot, or sign a guy like a Tramon Williams and put him in the slot. But the problem is Humphrey is so good at his natural position that I feel it almost gives him to put him anywhere else. And when you can continue to sign these free agents midseason off the street and cuts off the street, but that you don't really know how that's going to go. And I would really like to see them invest some sort of draft capital, mid to late, in a slot corner for depth, because you can't rely on the player. And I really, really like Tavon Young. I think he's a really good player when he's available, but I think the fact that they haven't really looked towards backing him up and giving that depth at that position. They have such great depth at outside corner. And I think that's kind of been an overlooked piece of the roster.
Yeah, it's certainly it has a domino effect when Tavon goes down, who's one of your best cornerbacks to start with, and then Humphrey moves to the slot, degrading not only the slot corner role probably, but definitely the outside corner spot that he left. You have a net loss at those positions.
Exactly.
And then the Ravens, had other concerns this year because they had hoped that Jimmy Smith could play some safety. I honestly never really thought that was realistic. I thought his value as a fourth corner is too high and physically he wasn't up to playing safety. But any thought of him being the back end of the Ravens' dime went away when he had to move to outside corner. So you end up with this domino effect of moves the Ravens had to make to kind of make up for Tavon's loss.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, it worked out to a degree. I think Tramon Williams did okay. I think Marlon Humphrey did okay. I mean, he did great. He was Marlon Humphrey. But you do lose that guy on the outside, exactly like you're saying.
Mm-hmm. So the Ravens had other situations where they really needed two slot corners. Now, against Pittsburgh in the first game, they faced for the first time a team that was willing to regularly stick Ben in the shotgun, have four wide receivers and a tight end, 0-1 personnel, you'd call that. They also faced other four receiver sets later in the year. I'm trying to remember who did it against them. Might have been Dallas, but I'm thinking it was another team. In fact, Buffalo did a fair amount of that. And they needed to have four corners that they could put on the field and two guys who were comfortable enough, oftentimes chasing some faster guys out of the slot. And it's not an easy thing. It's a very different got set to play slot corner than it is to play on the outside. That first Pittsburgh game, they went to Terrell Bonds, who is a natural slot corner. It just didn't work out. He got really picked on by Roethlisberger for 3 out of 3 for 20 yards, plus a big pass interference penalty that helped fuel their two drives that brought him back in that ball game.
Right, exactly. And that's sort of where I think that need comes. Going into the season, I thought that they would put Deshaun Elliott as sort of a jack of all trades DB behind Earl Thomas and behind Chuck Clark, both as safety depth and as slot corner depth. But obviously, with what happened with Earl Thomas, Elliott was forced into the starting role. He played pretty darn well, but now you have that depth problem. And the thing about the secondary is these guys are all going to play. Like, that's just how it's going to be. It's a high injury position. It's a position where in certain defensive alignments, you need a lot of these guys on the field. Like you said, sometimes we have two on the field for some of these formations. So it's a little bit concerning to me that we don't have a guy waiting in the wings who has that sort of skill set. I mean, Tavon Young's on an expensive contract, and he's not necessarily reliable. He's great when he's playing, but it's always been puzzling to me that they don't address that.
Mm-hmm. Well, they did address it in terms of reducing his salary, but that effectively also guaranteed this year's money. And
right.
he's going to be here now this year. Next year, he's really playing for his contract next year, this year. So if he has a good year, he'll probably hang around, or his butt will probably always be hanging out there as a potential cap casualty for next year, just given it's the last year of a multi-year deal as it is for all such players. We all hope Tavon comes back. I'm sure you're right, and I think that if we're talking about a mid-round pick, the Ravens probably need that anyway at cornerback, just because of the nature of the position. You got to keep developing them, keep drafting them, because they get hurt so much. And the other thing is they're kind of getting old at the cornerback position now, and they're certainly getting weighted in terms of the money they've spent with having both Peters, who's probably at his prime right now.
It's time for a reboot. Not a do-over, but a do-everything. A time to hike this, taste that, camp here, and road trip there. In a place that's wide open for new memories. South Dakota. Out here, adventure goes with the territory. Whether you're backpacking in Badlands National Park or diving into Lewis and Clark Lake, when you're ready, get back to nature and back to what you love. Get inspired at TravelSouthDakota.com.
O'Reilly. This is Derek's O'Reilly Auto Parts story.
After the third time jump-starting my car, I finally realized my battery was dying, so I stopped by O'Reilly to have it checked. They tested it right there in the parking lot. It was bad, real bad, but they helped me find the right battery for my car and even installed it for free. Now my car starts like new.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Maybe a little past it, but not terribly past it or anything, but he makes a ton of money. You have Jimmy Smith, who's one of the oldest players on the team, and he makes a lot of money. And then you have Humphrey, who's just really entering his prime, or just in it, I'll say, who's making an unbelievable amount of money. And by the end of his contract, it might be a problem, but it's too early to worry about that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm 100% with you there. It's definitely an aging group, and especially because Jimmy Smith, he is on a 1-year deal. He's not guaranteed to come back in 2022. Tavon Young is here, but he's not guaranteed to come back. We could be looking at a really new room. So I think getting that blood in now is important, just like you say. Absolutely.
Yeah, Peters may not be back next year either. And even this year, he has an enormous cap savings if they do cut him. So it's still a possibility. I mean, if there's a surprise cut coming, he could be it. I'm not saying it'd be the right move. I'm not saying I'd like it. But if you look at who makes a difference cap-wise, he's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we saw some struggles in coverage with quarterbacks getting the ball out so quickly on the Ravens and not letting our pass rush get home. And I think that problem will only get worse as injuries come and as those things happen if you don't have that backup plan in place. And I know there are quite a few slot guys, prototypical slot guys coming out in the draft that look great. So I'm really hoping that the Ravens can do something there.
Is there anyone in particular you got your eye on so far, or in general you've heard it?
I got a name written down, but I don't have it here.
Okay, no problem. We'll do it another time. The Ravens are unusual, and I've mentioned this a lot of times, so longtime listeners will have heard me say this before, but they're unusual in that they have a bunch of very long corners on the team, and that has not always been the case in Ravens history. They've often had a bevy or a stable of slot corners and relatively few guys who meet those prototypical length requirements on the outside. Now, the Ravens are almost all aircraft carriers with Averett and Smith and Humphrey and Peters. That's a lot of size at the cornerback position. And none of those guys are really ideally suited to move to the inside, even though Humphrey did it and did it pretty well. And Averett being one of their younger players, I think he's going to be a player that they really want to try and build around. So he's not going to be the answer in the slot either. So I'm in agreement with you that I think drafting a slot corner would make a lot of sense about that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's almost like a different position. Slot corner is almost like we call them all DBs, but it's like it's a completely different body type. It's a completely different skill set. And the fact that we only have one guy who's really homegrown there and who really came up in our system and knows what we're about, it's always puzzling. I don't know if I don't think that it's necessarily something that you need to go out and go get somebody because it's just that important and go spend free agency dollars on anybody. Maybe if you want to bring in a guy like a Cut or like a Tremont Williams or one of those calibers of players to come in and go through camp, but youth is important, like we've been talking about. So yeah, it's the Ravens always say you can never have enough corners, but they just don't address this one specific slot corner, which is a totally different skill set. It's really weird.
Yeah, difficult position, much more complicated to play than on the outside. Yeah. Requires roller skates as opposed to long speed. There's ball anticipation. Outside corners have more time to react to that ball, but it really helps them to have those heavy-handed baseball bat arms like Humphrey has. Use the boundary effectively, which is usually a size thing. The bigger you are, the better you are at using the boundary as a defender. It's very different. It really is, and it's hard to get some people to understand that. But it's good to talk to someone who really gets it, Sebastian.
Yeah, and I mean, as Patrick Queen gets better in coverage, it's going to get a lot easier over the middle of that field because he definitely has the skill set to do it. It's just he wasn't even a full 1-year starter at LSU. He has a lot of time that he needs to keep it put together, and he needs to keep. I mean, he didn't have a full camp. There was a lot working against his ability to come in and contribute, and I still think he did a really, really good job. But I think that supplementing, he can't do it all. You need to have other players like that, and I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Right. Hopeful for a big improvement out of Patrick Queen here as well. Sebastian, appreciate you joining us again, and tell people where they can find you on Twitter.
Yeah, my Twitter is at @ask_Sebastian. I just basically tweet about football.
All right, fantastic. I'm sure he's worth a follow after hearing him here. If you want to be on Film Study, send me 3 bullets. A nice focus topic like this we're done in about 11 minutes here, and that's great, Sebastian. We're looking for more content of this length that's very focused. We can talk about, very digestible. But send me 3 bullets if you can. Filmstudy21@verizon.net is my email, @FilmStudyRavens, if you want to reach me that way on Twitter. Appreciate it and love to hear from you. Sebastian, thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We'll talk to you next time on Film Study.
It's time for a reboot. Not a do-over, but a do-everything. A time to hike this, taste that, camp here, and road trip there. In a place that's wide open for new memories. South Dakota. Out here, adventure goes with the territory. Whether you're backpacking in Badlands National Park or diving into Lewis and Clark Lake. When you're ready, get back to nature and back to what you love. Get inspired at TravelSouthDakota.com.
Call 1-888-FARMERS to switch, and you could save an average of $470 on your auto insurance. That's a lot of money in just a few minutes. With savings like that, you could be lounging on an impractical amount of ornate and overpriced throw pillows you bought for your couch. But you won't, because you're better with money than that. That's why you're calling us in the first place. Call 1-888-FARMERS to get a quote today.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Based on average nationwide annual savings survey data July to December 2020. Underwritten by Farmers Truck or Fire Insurance Exchanges or affiliate. Products not available in every state.